Hey, good morning, Jamie here, and I want to invite you down memory lane today. So there are three important questions I want to ask you that are very hard, and they take a lot of time to think about, but they will massively influence not only understanding where you are today in life, but where you want to go in life. So those three questions I want to ask you this morning are: one, how did you get to where you are today? Personally and professionally. The second question I want to ask you is, how do you define yourself? And how would you introduce yourself to someone? And the third question is, who do you want to be when you grow up? Now, notice I didn't say what do you want to be when you grow up. So those three questions, in order for us to build a future, in order for us to have a better future, the very first thing we have to do is understand, how did I even get to where I am today? So stop and think about what you do professionally today. How do you make money? What do you do for a living? What skills do you have? What knowledge do you have? What experiences do you have? And most of us don't realize that the decisions we made professionally, what we do for a living, came from our past. It came from when we were kids, most of the time. So 50% of our behavioral patterns and our thought patterns are formed by the time we're 5 years old. And roughly 80 to 90% of those are formed by the time we're 18. So that first question, how did I get to where I am today? I'll give a quick example of mine. So when I was 13 years old, really quickly, there's things called key decisions, which is when something very emotional or when something very intense happens when, in any given moment. It could be when we're young, it could be when we're midlife or even late life, but when something very emotional or something very intense happens, in that moment, we respond. And oftentimes it's subconscious. We decide, what does this mean to me? What does this mean to my life? What does this mean to my family? What does this mean to my friends, my community? And in that moment, when we decide what it means, we also make a decision. And that decision is called a key decision. So that key decision is going to affect not only your present, but it's going to affect every single decision that you make for the rest of your life until you uncover what that key decision is, why you made it in the first place, how it served you in that moment. So we had a lot of habits, a lot of behaviors that don't serve us, but they served us in the past. They served us, they helped us in some way, shape, or form back then. And because it did help us, it did serve us, we continued running that same pattern forever going forward. But most people after 18 years old, they never stop and ask themselves, why am I the way that I am? How did I get here? Why am I like this? Why do I behave like this? Why do I make these decisions? So going back to my story just as an example, so you can begin to think through your own story and your own life. But back in 2008, during the Great Recession, everybody was hit financially, or most people were hit financially. And my family was hit. And especially the engineering community and the automotive community, which is where I grew up. I mean, just north of Detroit. Almost all the fathers are engineers. Most of the families are automotive families. So the entire automotive industry was hit. And I remember I was 13 years old and I just finished football practice and I went home and I just remember seeing a situation where I walked into the kitchen. My mom was really upset and it was just thinking through the finances. And I remember we had to sell our cabin, which was like my favorite place in the world. We had to sell the cabin, and I remember as a 13-year-old asking the question, what is happening? Why is this happening? What can I do about it? Well, as a 13-year-old, you can't do anything about it. So what did I decide to do next? And I didn't know I was deciding this, but in that moment, subconsciously, I made the decision that I never want to have this happen to me or my family or in the future. I never want this problem to happen again. And so I decided that, all right, well, hey, Mom, what does Uncle Ed do? Oh, he's in finance. Okay. Well, what does Mr. Pichu do? Oh, he's in real estate investing. He does finance. Oh, okay. What does Kurt do? He's in finance. He does wealth management. Got it. Finance, finance, finance. All right. Without me even knowing it, as a 13-year-old, I decided finance is going to be my future because that's where the money is. So I thought. So then I go into high school. What do I take? Accounting and finance classes. I go into college. What do I major in? Accounting and finance. What do I do when I graduate? I immediately try to find the absolute best opportunity in finance, which at the time I thought was banking. So then I go into banking. And it wasn't until I was in banking where I started realizing, is this really what I want for the rest of my life? Is this who I am? And, how did I get here? And I started realizing that wasn't what I wanted for my future. That was not what I wanted to be the rest of my life. And when I left banking, that was where I had to struggle with the second question. Who am I? How do I define myself? How do I introduce myself? And if you really stop to think about it, most people introduce themselves and define themselves as their career, as what they do for a job, their professional life. So I'm a banker, I'm a consultant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a marketer, I'm a salesperson. But the tricky part about when you define yourself by your career, you become locked. Hey, Pooch. You become locked and limited to that capacity. And that's why a lot of people are terrified of making career decisions or career moves, because they view themselves as, this is who I am. This is all I've ever known. This is all I've ever done. And you are more than your skills. You are more than your knowledge. You are so much more than your career. You were not born a banker. You were not born a consultant. You were not born a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or a supply chain manager. Like, what you do, you chose for a reason. And that reason usually comes from the past. But if you don't want that going forward, thank God we're more than that. We can do whatever we want. And I know this sounds super cliche and super, yip, yip, hooray, but it's so true. We created our own lives. And a lot of people don't take responsibility for where they are. They blame the government. They blame the economy. They blame their teachers. They blame the company. They blame their managers. They blame everyone but themselves. And we, thankfully in the United States, we're at will. If you really want to quit your company, you can. And well, then people are like, well, what if I need income? There's a lot of ways to make income. If you really, really need to, go work at McDonald's. I mean, there's always a way, and I know that's a ridiculous example, but it's a lot of people say, I can't. And no one told you you can't other than yourself. So that second part of who am I? How do I define myself? You're more than your job. You are not your career. And we need to collectively stop introducing ourselves as I am X. Because it's a very empty and it's a very limited scope of who you are. Because I guarantee you're good at a sport, or you're good at painting, or you're good at dancing, or you love reading about something, or you're a fantastic storyteller. I don't know, like, you're more than that. But then that third question, which is who do I want to become in the future? That's where it gets really exciting. And that's where I hope that your mind just continues expanding, because you can create whatever you want. But in order to create the future that you want, the very first thing that we have to do is we have to believe that I actually have control over that. And that's where I'm sure you've heard the difference between a victim and a victor, or a hero mentality. Is the victim mentality says things are happening to me. I have no control. I can't decide this. And they blame other people, or they say that I'm a victim of circumstance. I am helpless. Well, the moment that happens, you're stuck. Your future will never be better, because you are permanently locked into being a victim, not having control over anything. And if you don't have control over anything, you can't change anything. There's no cause-effect relationship. So when we think about who do we want to become in the future, it has to start with, one, accepting the fact that I own whatever my life is. I made these decisions. I'm the one that decided to do this. And once we take ownership, then we can also begin to say, what do I want? What do I want? Do I want this for my career? Do I want to make more money? Do I want to travel? Do I want to have a family earlier or later? Do I want to change my health? Do I want to increase my finances and my wealth? Like, what do you want? Because we have to first define what we want before we could ever even have a prayer of getting it. And very few people define what they want. Even more importantly is we need to define the person that's capable of doing that. So one of the hardest realities that I had to face, and I know that everybody I work with, and really all of us eventually have to face, is if we don't have what we want, it's because we have not become the person who's capable of having it yet. And it means that we need to grow. And that's hard. That's hard to accept, because, and one of the things that I've learned is, if we were already the person who is capable of doing it or having it, we'd already have it. So if we don't have what we want, it's also a little bit of a exciting, because we realize that, okay, I need to grow. How do I need to grow? What do I need to learn? What do I need to do? What decisions do I need to make? What actions do I have to take? And when we begin to take ownership and we change ourselves, we change our beliefs, we change our mentality, we change our behavior, we change our health, we change our morning routine. That's a whole nother topic I'll talk about sometime, but if you win the morning, you will absolutely win the day. The morning is crucial. So I'll leave you with those three questions today. One, how did you get to where you are today? Take some time and ask yourself what key emotional decisions or what key influences, whether it was family or a book or a TV show or something that happened in your past, like what led you to be who you are today and do what you're doing today professionally? And do you want to continue being that person and doing that for the rest of your life? Second is, how do you define yourself? If you are defining yourself by your career, you need to stop and ask yourself, what am I more, or what other things am I than my career? Because you are so much more than your career. You're so much more than one job title. And the third thing is, who do you want to become in the future? So what you could do for that is get a sheet of paper and write down at the very top, who do I want to become in the future? And start writing down different categories of life: spiritually, financially, emotionally, relationally, in terms of health and fitness, in terms of all the different areas of your life. Write those down and begin to define yourself. I am blah, 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 and fill it in for the categories. So challenge you. Those are the 3 questions. Begin to define those. Have an outstanding day, and looking forward to sending you more of these short vids.